regarded him as the tough fibrous sac around the heart. Then there's the heart inside that, and you've got fluid in between the two. And that was a definite problem. Did you have to have that aspirated, or did that go away on its own?
No, I was very lucky. So because I was so in tune with my body, and we kind of got this all, we caught it very early. My cardiologist was kind of telling me, hey, you're really lucky because your troponin level, which is a marker of heart damage, I guess like you said, it's on the myocardium versus the pericardium, but the troponin level I had was like a 0.8, and they told me, anything above a 1 is considered damage. And so I was right on the cusp of that, and he told me that he's had 5 or 6 guys come in with levels of 25 to 30 of really high troponin levels and really severe heart damage, and they have all kind of gone through the same process of trying to get better. But he told me I was very lucky that I came in so early and caught it. So, yeah.
So it sounds like your condition is mostly the pericarditis. Maybe some minimal myocarditis, but not significant myocarditis in the actual muscle of the heart, compared to some of these other guys who had troponins 30 times higher than yours were. And troponin comes from damage of the myocardium. Troponin comes from damage of troponins 30 times higher in the actual muscle of the heart, compared to some of these other guys who had troponins 30 times higher than yours were. And troponin comes from damage of the myocardium. So that indicates that I'm hoping your myocardium is in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I'm hoping so as well. And they did they originally did an EKG and a CKG on me to check if I had any weird arrhythmias or anything, and they couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
Then they did an echocardiogram, and he was reluctant to order the echocardiogram because he's like, I don't think you're going to have anything. I don't believe that you're going through this reaction. They did the echocardiogram, found the pericarditis, and then I did a cardiac MRI, and I did a CT scan on my heart as well with radiation, with the radioactive fluid. And yeah, it was, so I've had it looked at a million different ways, and they all said it looks really good, so I was very lucky in that aspect. But now I'm just kind of trying to get back to normal with the POTS symptoms, and then also the reactive arthritis.
Sure. I mean, how
the POTS symptoms, and then also the reactive arthritis.
Sure. I mean, how let's do those one at a time. And do you feel the POTS is getting a bit better?
Yeah.
Let's do those one at a time. And do you feel the POTS is getting a bit better?
Yeah.
Gradually. And don't let me put words in your mouth. If it's not, tell me.
No, it's really interesting. So like I said, on the days where I wake up and I feel pretty good, maybe I'll go for 3 or 4 days where I'm bedridden and just kind of in and out of bed for most of the time. And then I'll have a breakthrough where I feel really good, and I don't really have any of the POTS symptoms during those good days. Like, I'm pretty functional, but then, like I said, if I just overdo it a little bit, then I get back into that system, and then I do experience the POTS symptoms quite a bit. So it's just this weird reaction where, like, it comes and goes in waves, and that's what's really difficult about it, is I'm not sure how to manage it completely, and I'm trying so many different things. And originally we started with ivermectin, which seemed to help temporarily, but what's interesting with that is it kind of, as soon as you stop taking it, then all the symptoms just come back. And so I had a doctor explain to me that it seems like the ivermectin is kind of holding those spikes hostage and stopping them from interacting with your body, but it doesn't eliminate them. And so once the ivermectin's gone, then it just kind of lets the spikes free flow again. And so then the other thing that we started trying was ACE2 receptor blocking. Like pine needle tea and star anise, and now this black seed oil. And those have been the most effective for me. And so I started just drinking like a star anise tea. That's like a Chinese fruit from a pine tree. And I started making tea with that, and that helped a ton. And then like Thuja occidentalis, that's another kind of supplement that I would take, and that seemed to help quite a bit. So I'm trying to manage it, but then it's hard because you're taking so many things,
Yeah. I mean, and of course you don't
manage it, but then it's hard because you're taking so many things,
Yeah. I mean, and of course your doctor could prescribe drugs that would do that more specifically as well.
Yeah.
You did those.
I've been asking pretty seriously for months, and what's hard is, like, my primary doctor, she told me, hey, my hands are kind of tied because there's not an official treatment for this. There's not a treatment protocol. So she told me basically I'm not going to prescribe anything that's not officially, the right thing to do. So it's hard. And then it's been interesting to see her, her name's Susan, but it's really interesting to see her perspective shift over the past 3 months, because when I first came in, she was kind of saying, hey, this is really rare. I haven't seen anybody with this. Then month number 2, when I did my checkup, she's like, I'm kind of seeing this a little bit more. It's really interesting. Please send me any information that you find. I'd love to read about it and learn more. And then month 3, 3, she's like, this is a problem, and we need to figure this out. And yeah, it's just the way that my insurance is structured. It's with the state, so it's really difficult for them to prescribe things that aren't
right.
approved.
Yeah. So your condition has evolved with the state of medical knowledge. It sounds like.
Yeah.
So that was the part. So secondly, the arthritis. What joints are affected most, Kyle?
For me personally, it's like the last 4 vertebrae in my kind of lumbar spine, and then both of my SI joints, so both sides of my hip and pelvis, both my wrists, both my ankles, and then sometimes my like right collarbone. But I've broken this several times, so it's not too surprising on that one.
So it is kind of old injuries then that have re-inflamed.
Yeah, and that's what's so weird is like I've broken my right wrist. I've really severely sprained my left wrist. I've torn the ligaments in both ankles. I've messed up my SI joint. I've had all these different injuries over the years, but it just brought all of them back, and it almost feels like when I wake up I'm just re-broken, and I haven't. It's been years since that happened, so it's not like I'm in constant pain normally before this vaccine.
No.
I was totally normal, functional, and kind of a go-getter, and then just since this happened, I've just been, I just feel super weak and worthless, which is hard to feel because I'm one of those guys that wants to like do things and help and be active, and yeah.
Well, I can understand that, but of course your worth is not determined by what you can do. Your worth is determined by who you are. But I know how you feel. You want to get stuff done, don't you? I mean, that's...
Yeah, and I will say that this whole thing has been like such a great learning experience. For one, just understanding more about how the body works, and for 2, just really understanding how much there is a need for support groups. And that's been really interesting for me. Is I've had a lot of people message me, even after my last YouTube video. And one guy, he's like in his 20s, and he told me, hey, I have all the same symptoms. I've been dealing with this for 6 weeks, and I'm scared to tell my family because I don't want them to disown me. Because, you know, they're very big believers in the vaccine. And that's kind of what was hard is, like, my mom was very pro-vaccine, and, you know, we got it. And when I was telling her at first, she almost was kind of like, I don't really believe that this is happening to you. And then as it's developed, she's like, oh, my God, I can't believe this is happening to so many other people. So, like I said, that's why I just kind of took a break and waited. So this happened. My big reaction was early July, and then I waited a few months to say anything really, just because I figured nothing was going to age well, and also the understanding of this being an issue has been getting more and more uncovered, you know?
And the other thing I think is if there's any possibility of this inflammatory reaction, I think it's quite important not to exercise. And that's kind of one of the messages we want to get out. You know, you only start exercising when a doctor tells you can, or preferably a cardiologist tells you can start exercising again, because until then, there's a greater risk if people are exercising when they have heart inflammation. We don't want to be doing that. Now, I want to talk about these support groups in a minute, Kat, but before we do that, you mentioned this metallic taste in the mouth. Now, how long after the vaccine was put in your arm did you get a metallic taste in your mouth?
So I had a slight metallic taste almost within 30 seconds of administration of the vaccine, and then they tell you to hang out around the store. We did it at a pharmacy, and they told me to hang out for 15 minutes, and it was kind of present for that whole entire 15-minute period, and even later into the day. So about 2-3 hours later, I still had this lingering things, and I was actually trying to like chase it down with different drinks. I was like, oh man, this is so weird that I'm feeling this. But like I said, I asked them if this was normal. They said no. I haven't really heard of that much. And then now talking to a few other injured people, they've had similar experiences as well. And so like you said in your video about aspiration, I don't know if maybe that's a sign that they really did just hit a blood vessel or artery or vein and injected it into my circular system, you know?
I mean, the fact that a clinician doesn't realise that a metallic taste in the mouth could be a sign of an inadvertent intravascular administration concerns me.
Yeah.
Because what happens is if the vaccine goes into your muscle, then it stays in your muscle. And it's going to take, from an intramuscular injection, it's going to take half an hour to be systemically absorbed at all, or much longer than that. But if it goes into a vessel, you get a metallic taste straight away. Now, this has happened to me many times when I've been giving intravenous injections at work. When you mean to be giving intravenous injections, and people often say, particular antibiotics, for example, or vitamin preparations, they can say, oh, I can taste that. And that happens, like, as you say, about 20 seconds after the injection. So the fact that you could taste that straight away, to me, is very suspicious of them inadvertently giving that into a blood vessel. The only other thing I can think of which will cause a reaction in the mouth straight away is an allergic reaction. But did you have any other features of an allergic reaction? Did you go red? Were you itchy? Did you go dizzy at the time?
No, I had no other features of it. And like I kind of said earlier, on the first dose, I developed a sore arm a couple days later, and I was like, oh man, this is kind of gnarly actually. And then the second time I was like, oh, I feel great, I'm totally fine. In April, my girlfriend, she had the sore arm, and it's kind of like, oh man, it's really getting me the second time, and I was like, I don't feel it at all. So I thought I handled it really well, but maybe they just injected it into my vein.
Well, it's certainly possible. I mean, so basically you're having the inflammatory reaction in your heart and your joints instead of in your arm, which of course is where you prefer to have it. So I think that really is suspicious that part of the reason that you have this problem is that vaccine could have been given into a blood vessel.
Yeah, and I shared...
I don't think we'll ever know, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, I shared your video on aspiration on my Instagram page, and I had about 10 to 12 nurses kind of message me and go, oh my god, I've been taught this my whole life, and I don't know why we're not doing it. I didn't even think about that, and this is so helpful. Please, thank you so much for sharing this info. I'll pass it along. And so I had all these people reach out and go, yeah, I know to do this. Why am I not doing this? Why are they saying to not do this? So it was really interesting.
Yeah. But thank you for sharing your suffering with this guy. It's a brave thing to do.
Yeah, and it was weird because one nurse told me, hey, I've never seen someone do an aspiration on an intramuscular injection. He's like, it just doesn't really make sense. And I was like, well, have you ever given an mRNA injection before? This is the first time that these have been really around, so maybe it's a little more important this time.
That's right. These are microparticulates. Even the adenovirus vector vaccines and the messenger RNA vaccines, by definition, the messenger RNA vaccines have to be given in like a little droplet, so it gets into the cells, and that is a microparticulate, and that gets into the circulation, and we know that can cause inflammatory problems. So I really am suspicious that this was at least part of the reason that you've had this appalling problem. Now, go ahead, Carl. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just about to listen.
Yeah. So tell us about this event that's coming up in Washington.
Yeah, so it was actually really a cool opportunity came out of sharing my story on YouTube, which, like you said, is very scary, especially in the time of censorship right now. And so I tried to be very neutral with my story and just say my personal facts of what happened to me.
Yes.
And a woman who is working with a group called React19.org, they are working directly with the FDA and the NIH on vaccine injury, and they've been working with them. She was actually, Brianne, the lady who runs this, she was injured in December or November of 2020. She was one of the first clinical trial patients. And so she was injured, and she was one of the first injured people in America. And so she's been working on this for, almost a full year now. And the FDA and NIH have had studies saying that this is possible reaction since December of 2020. And so there's really this big push to kind of, hey, please acknowledge that this is an actual thing, because for one, it's hard when you are someone affected and the doctors don't even know that this is a thing.
Sure.
Like what happened to me. They just sent me on my way. And for two, the only thing they're actually acknowledging
Нет, не надо. Да нет, не надо. Нет, не надо. Да. этого нет. Да наоборот, наоборот, это был самый. Я себе думал, нет, да наоборот. Музыкант просто все. Вот это и было самое. Да наоборот, это. Вот это. Наоборот, это да нет. Ну наоборот, наоборот, да наоборот, ну нет, да наоборот, да нет, да нет, вот я думал о себе, да. Да наоборот, да, это да наоборот, да. Да вот наоборот, да наоборот, вот это я, да наоборот, Да, это есть тот самый. Да нет, да не. Да. Ну вот она, да, и думаю, упс, безработный. Ну вот безработный. Да. Да наоборот и... Да, нет, наоборот, и да, это есть. Не худо не стыдно, вот он дальше. Че, я хуже всех, что ли? Да наоборот, это нет, наоборот. Вот это и был самый, да, нет, вот, наверное, нет, нет. Да. Все хорошо. Наоборот, да. Спасибо, не говорю. Понимаю. Наоборот. Наоборот.
The COVID variant Omicron is exploding all across the globe, just sweeping through countries. We're starting to see cases and even deaths mount. How bad is it? Come on, let's go find out. Hello everyone, Dr. Chris Martinson here, back with you. I'm wearing my red and my green because we're doing this on December 22nd. You can feel that Christmas spirit in my household. Happy holidays, everybody who's watching this before the holidays. If you're watching afterwards, hopefully some of this turned out to be prophetic. But let's take a quick peek. Omicron, what is it? You know we've been tracking it for a while. Is it A huge disaster. It is. It's a giant disaster, but really only for the data hesitant. That's my name for people who don't want to look at the data. By the way, we're breaking out the honey badger again, because this Omicron variant absolutely qualifies as the honey badger. It is unstoppable. It is not caring about vaccination status. Looks to be about as transmissive as measles, by which I mean it's explosive. So let's go take a look at this data, see where it is. But first, well, I think I want to start here, and so I'm going to get my drawing tool out so I can draw. I just pulled these today off of Google, and check this out. Bill Gates on Omicron. We could be seeing or entering the worst part of the pandemic. Bill Gates has canceled most of his holiday plans due to Omicron. You know what? I would care more about what Bill Gates thought if he actually graduated college, or actually had a science degree, or actually practiced science, or was a doctor or something. But he's none of those things. So I actually don't really care what Bill says. But I do care that he makes a lot of money off of this whole thing, and he seems to find a way to always be telling us how bad and how awful and how scary this whole thing is. How about this? CNN says Britain battles Omicron tidal wave. Tidal waves are pretty bad things. As infections double every 2 to 3 days, and first death, singular, from variant is recorded. Below that, CNN, Omicron spreading fast. That's alarming, even if it is mild. No, it's actually, if it's mild, it's not alarming at all. We'll cover why in just a second. AP News, virus fears widen as Omicron variant takes hold across U.S. Pretty dim picture of a bunch of, cold-looking, blue lighting, masked up people. And then over here in my home state, Boston Globe says Omicron now dominant in Massachusetts. We asked experts at the recent COVID surge. So you can see the language here. This isn't cherry picking. This is what shows up when I just say Omicron variant constrained the surge to the most recent week. And it's just headlines like this. This is just what shows up. They're completely unwarranted. Here's why. Let's go there. First, really, really nice. I have to give props whenever I see it. The UK Health Security Agency, the HSA, has done a really good job giving us data around all kinds of things. The Delta variant beforehand, vaccination status and surveillance, and now Omicron surveillance. They have a whole report out on it. I like it because it gives us data we can look at. So let's look at it really quickly here. This is the most recent report that's coming out here. It's current up through, I believe, the 20th of December. And, yep, so right down here, up through, let me make sure I got this one, yeah. Up through the 20th of December. Okay, so what do we see here? First, they have what they're calling confirmed Omicron cases. They've done the complete sequencing of the samples they get, and they see that they have Omicron. It's confirmed. Now, we also have these things called the PCR tests, which are reasonably accurate, provided you don't overcycle them, and you don't go above a cycle threshold of maybe 30-ish tops. I can't tell you what protocol they're using here, but I will tell you that this thing right here, the SGTF, these are putative Omicron cases. And I'm going to explain what that means in just a second so you can see. And at any rate, what are we seeing here? In England, 56,000 confirmed Omicron cases. So this is just a daily it's just exploding right now. And they have 118,000 total. And so you can see from previous report, 14,000 cases coming in from the day before. Another 14,000 here. It's just massive, massive cases. So they're recording roughly, I don't know, I think it's closing in on 90,000 cases of COVID per day in the UK. As I'm going to show you from this report, the vast majority of those now, as in 3/4, are Omicron. So this is just how they're reporting it here, and they have a lot of these. So what is this SGTF? Why is this a putative case? So we have to understand something about the PCR test itself and how it's conducted. So I put a little something together. This SGTF stands for S-gene target failure. So when you get a PCR test, they put this little swab right up your nose, and then they get a sample out which has all kinds of your DNA, but it also has some of that viral RNA in it, and then they take that viral RNA, convert it back into DNA, and begin amplifying it, amplifying it, amplifying it. So the way they do that is they take a little stretch of DNA or nucleic acid material that would match some very specific part of the virus that you wouldn't find in any other virus. And so if it matches those, you say, oh, well, it had to come from that. Now, when you have an S target failure, they actually have 3 separate parts of the virus they're looking for in one of these PCR tests. They have a little piece here from the RDRP, that's the reverse the reverse ribonuclease reverse enzyme, and they have a little bit from the S protein, and they have a little bit from the N, or the nucleocapsid protein, and so they're looking for this RDRP, they're looking for the S, they're looking for the N. Well, Omicron is so different that they can still get a match off of these two highly conserved sections, but the S doesn't match anymore because it's that different. It's part of the reason why current antibodies from current vaccines don't work so well in stopping this, in fact don't work at all, according to some data, because they're targeted right at this S thing, the spike protein, and that's the part that isn't even matching when they're doing the polymerase chain reaction, the PCR test. So that's why you get stuff like this. They're saying, well, we confirmed a bunch of cases because we sequenced them, but then we had all of these PCR tests that we were doing that just didn't match at all, and we're calling those the S gene target failure, the SGTF cases. Pretty likely those are Omicron. So this plus this little category plus this, those two columns together, that's Omicron. All right, so with that as a background, it's already 3/4 of the cases from the same report. This is total COVID cases with known S gene status, so this is definitely Omicron, and the SGTF cases. And when you look at this, the percent of this, yeah, they're already well over 3/4 on average when you go down this whole line right here. Look at London, 89.7% fall in of everything that they're doing here, saying, yeah, this is Omicron. So Omicron just got to the UK not that long ago. It's already 89% of the cases they're detecting, let's call it 90, in London. So it swept through and it exploded in really quick and hard. In fact, how quick and hard? The doubling time, this is astonishing, is averaging anywhere from, what's the lowest on here? 1.7? Do we get lower than that? Oh, 1.67. So let's call it around 1.7 days and a high of closing in on 3 days-ish, but somewhere around 2 days, doubling. That means if it went from 1,000 cases to 2,000 cases in just 2 days, and then it goes to 4,000, 8, 16, and so on and so forth, within about 7 doublings usually, you pretty much got the whole place covered. By 10 or 20 doublings, you're all done. So that means we could say, well, what's 20 doublings? 40 days. So if this continues at this particular pace, which I don't think it will, but if it did, basically the whole country gets it, no avoiding it. That's what we've been saying for a while. Nobody's going to avoid this thing. We're all going to get our turn with it. So I think that's an okay thing, because I'm going to show you the data behind that next. This is actually some of the best news I've seen so far. We've been tracking this for a while, wondering, early returns from Omicron didn't look that bad, so fingers crossed, we were saying, hey, this could be a very good thing. Highly transmissive, but without that much pathology associated with it. That's the best of all worlds if, and here's the one thing we don't know, if the antibodies that your body develops and the natural immunity your body develops, whether it's naive, meaning you haven't had a vaccine, whether you've already had COVID of some other variant, or you've had a shot, or some combination of those last two, plus we put Omicron on top of that, does that actually give us extra immunity? I think so. I don't have the data for that yet, so that's just a guess, but that's both what I hope and what I think. So looking at this, here's something really interesting. So when they're sequencing all these cases, you can see how many cases they have. I think this is just their testing week. I think people come in for tests on Monday. I think that's why you see this little cadence to it right here. It's a weekly cadence. All of a sudden, this is Omicron coming in, the SGTF and presumptive cases. Look at that explosion. What you're going to notice if you look at this carefully with me, let me back this up.